Are you ready? Are you shitty down?
The Schein On Podcast.
The Schein On Podcast.
The Schein On Podcast, Season 5.
We're going to pull back the curtain on the divorce process. It's fun, insightful, tremendous guests. They're topics that far too often many people shy away from. But not here on the Schein On Podcast.
Episode 93 of the Schein On Podcast. I'm Evan Schein. We have an absolutely fantastic episode today. On today's featured guest spot, I am joined by Dr. Tracey Dalgleish, a clinical psychologist and relationship expert who discusses her new book, You, Your Husband, and His Mother. The conversation explores the complex dynamics between husbands, their wives, and mothers-in-law. Dave, I hope my mother-in-law, who's a big Schein On Podcast listener, big fan of the podcast, she might have to keep her ears closed for this one, or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe she needs to have her ears wide open, taking vigorous notes. What do you think?
I mean, there's the classic American stereotype of the mother-in-law being someone who is overbearing and someone who is always in your business. When I was married, my mother-in-law, I cherished my mother-in-law. I had to. You have to keep the peace. I'm sure yours is lovely.
It's great. She's lovely, right?
Yeah.
You know what? There's these dynamics that come into play, right? Is that fair to say? No matter how great the relationship is, kids, grandkids, I mean, the whole shebang, right? There's always that dynamic that we dissect with Dr. Tracey.
Yeah. That's that's her girl that you're sharing your life with there. So of course she's going to care about what's going on. But Dr. Tracey's great. Fantastic conversation that you're going to hear.
We have a jam-packed episode with the docket, the over-underrated segment, and the They Said It spot starring you. And a big shout-out, Dave, to all the listeners. The comments were pouring in after the last episode and the overrated, underrated segment. And my hot take on pumpkin spice lattes. You know how many people reached out on that?
Yeah, Pumpkin Spice Nation. Don't be one of those people that say, "Oh, too much pumpkin spice." No, come on. Let's swim in
pumpkin spice all the time.
Let the streets run sweet with pumpkin spice everything.
That's right. And Dave, we have a great docket. So as we always do on the podcast, let's fire it up.
Here we go.
And now, let's see what's on the docket.
Well, it's a light docket today, Evan, just one item, but it's a real good one. Comes to us from the Wall Street Journal. And the headline reads as follows. Divorce plunged in Kentucky. Equal custody for fathers is a big reason why. The article goes on to say a law setting 50-50 shared custody as the state's standard was hailed as a victory for fathers, but critics say it puts mothers and children at risk. We haven't talked in a while in the podcast about those dynamics and whether judges favor the custodial parent and the non-custodial parent, and whether it's typically the wife or the husband. Your thoughts on this article, Evan?
Yeah, Dave, it's a great article and a fascinating read. And look, this issue is coming up all across the country, right? Some states, as we talked about, have a presumption for 50-50 shared custody. Other states like New York don't. There is no automatic 50-50 custody. There is a factor-based best interest of the child analysis that takes place in New York. So Kentucky is one of the states that there is that presumption, 50-50. So I think what you're seeing is there is this concern from moms who otherwise might be much more inclined to file for a divorce. Wait a second, let me hit the brakes, let me hit the pause button. If I'm not going to be with my child or children as nearly as much as I would have expected, or I should be, right, based on a whole host of factors and whatever their belief is based on why they should be the primary custodial parent. And if there's young children, they might be staying in unhappy marriages, right? You know, they might be staying together solely because they don't want to divide their kids and can't see a scenario where their dad has 50% of the time. So I think that you're seeing that reflected in the statistics.
Yeah, that's kind of sad reality, right? I mean,
it's sad on a lot. It's sad on a few fronts.
Yeah, it's sad because you'd hate to think that people are staying in miserable marriages and if we follow this logic, the marriage is by definition miserable because it's so bad that she doesn't, well, in a typical scenario, the woman doesn't want to leave because she's only going to leave if she gets the kids all of the time. If she doesn't trust her husband with the kids half of the time, then how much does she trust him in the marriage? It's too bad. But, the notion of the shared custody being the state standard, is that unusual, Evan? State to state?
Not unusual. There's definitely a lot of states across the country that do have this presumption of 50-50 custody. And look, there's two schools of thought. On one hand, it's, courts want both parties to be involved. The thought is it cuts down on litigation. No parent has a greater right to the child than the other parent. And you would have to prove why that parent should not have 50-50 time, as opposed to proving that that parent should have 50% of the time. So, the thought is it cuts down on a lot of litigation. It supports this idea that, both parents should be fully involved in the child's life. On the other hand, there is that concern that is it a shifting of the standards to what's best for the parents versus what's best for the child, right? Is it best for the child for time to be split? So once you actually change the standard and move it from a best interest analysis to an automatic shared, if you're taking the whole analysis out of the equation, then is anyone really looking out for the child? And we've had different guests on with different thoughts and different philosophies. It's a fascinating topic.
That's right. And that's why we take so much great pains in selecting our judges. Well, at least I assume they do in Kentucky as well. I don't know if they're elected judges in Kentucky. I couldn't tell you. But it's at the end of the day, don't you want that analysis? Don't you want what's best for the children with the judge, the ultimate impartial arbiter? And I do hope some of these people who aren't getting divorced in Kentucky are doing so because they've decided they're happy. But who knows?
Well, you know what I think it does? And I've had this conversation. On one hand, and someone made this point, when you automatically have a presumption, 50-50, it becomes more about the parents, right? And egos get involved, emotions get involved. And there's so much time arguing over 50-50 and a percentage and regulating your child to a percentage and a number and the days. And a lot of times when you have that conflict and you have those arguments, what's best for the child often gets lost. And you set yourself up where you end up back in court when you realize it didn't work months later, years later.
You've probably come across this before, but I met a woman once, it was a friend of mine. I knew she was divorced. I asked her how everything was going. She said, we are fighting a little bit about the custody of the kids. And I said, oh, yeah, you always miss your kids when they're not there, right? And she said, no. We're fighting over who has to take them more.
You know what? I've had that issue.
That comes up, yeah.
I had that issue. I'll never forget it, where neither parent, I represent a mom, neither parent wanted the kids on the weekends. It's sort of ironic when you think about it, which is she was trying to get out there. She was young, rebuild her life. And the weekends was when she wanted to go out. She wanted to find love again. It was a short marriage. She made a mistake. She was like, you know what? I'll take the kids during the weekend. Dad, you have them not every other weekend.
Every weekend.
I mean, that's unheard of. But ultimately, he didn't want that either. So you see all sorts of things. It never gets dull.
I pray for those kids. I hope they turned out okay. Well, no pumpkin spice on the show today, Evan, I don't think, but who knows, because we're up to the unpredictable and always entertaining segment, Overrated, Underrated.
Overrated.
Or underrated.
Overrated, underrated. I throw out some topics to Evan, and he is, in this case, the ultimate arbiter, Judge Schein. First topic, we've got one from the world of law and then a couple from parts elsewhere. The first one is the notion of black letter law as it pertains to divorce. So by black letter law, what we mean is kind of what it sounds like, the law as it's written down in statutes and law books and etc., and to distinguishing it from trial work or anything that goes on in the world of the law that doesn't pertain to the actual laws on the pages. Your thoughts, overrated or underrated, when it comes to divorce law?
Overrated, Dave. Look, the law provides context, a framework, but here's the reality. Every judge is different. Every case is different. New York is an equitable state, not an equal state, meaning the assets are divided equitably based on factors. Divorce law is a lot more gray than it is black and white. Every marriage, every situation, every family dynamic is different. The custody standard in New York is what's in the best interest of the child, also a factor-based test. Spousal support, child support, guidelines in high-income cases, they're just guidelines. They're just minimums. Judges are going to go above the caps based on the needs. And those numbers are going to vary case by case, family by family. And look, you can make the argument, and I would buy it and believe it. You can make the argument that divorce is more art than law, more storytelling than law, more strategy and negotiation than law, more about persuasion and improvisation. What's your thought?
Well, for sure. I think in the law, generally, I've always said that the bar exam is the biggest waste of time in the professional world, because it forces, when you become a lawyer, of course, you have to pass the bar exam. Now, I don't want any Tom, Dick, or Harry to be able to become a lawyer, but what we do is we force these law students to cram all kind of black letter law into their heads, when the role of a lawyer is, it's like 5% is actually knowing and being comfortable, having memorized the black letter law. You have to know how to look up the law, for sure. That's a skill. But then more importantly, it's almost all people skills. It's
and isn't it more, to that point, it's more EQ than IQ.
Oh, yeah. Oh, for
like
sure.
So many things. Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know how much time you have. If you have 2 hours to, we can talk about all the problems with law schools and, the bar exam and the money-making machine that's law school, and what they teach you and don't teach you and should teach you. But yeah, it's, sure, the law's involved, but it's what you do with that law and how to apply it to each scenario, each set of facts.
Did you do any kind of clinical program in law school? No. Okay. No. Yeah, I don't know what they're like in your school. I went to BU and I ended up doing a clinical program that took me to landlord-tenant housing court, landlord-tenant. So I was, as a student attorney, representing people who were getting evicted from their homes. And that was incredibly rewarding. It was very, very stressful for, being, 24 years old or whatever. And this woman who's got a small child counting on me to defend. Now, I've got a so-called real attorney with me, but I'm doing the work and I'm in court and I'm arguing. And, we've probably talked about it on the show before. In med school, you don't walk into an operating room and pick up a scalpel before you've ever done it before. You get brought along, you get mentored, you got to do all those layers of stuff. But with a lawyer, the skills that you, for example, ultimately have comes from years of meeting people, learning about their lives, and then not to mention the courtroom work and, knowing the judge's tendencies, knowing what jurors respond to. That's the fascinating part of the law to me. So therefore, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, and I'm an adjunct professor, as you know, Dave. Yeah, and I'm an adjunct at Cardozo Law School. And, we try to give our students like a really hands-on, practical experience, right? Like, I think back to my law school days at Syracuse, where I absolutely loved it. And like some of the best classes were taught by adjuncts, real life, practical experience, sharing stories, talking about their day, giving real life examples. So we try to do that, now as adjunct professors, where we teach a divorce process course. But then that's what you want as a student to have that hands-on experience, because that's the practical experience that you're not going to get from a textbook, and it's going to carry with you through your entire career.
Absolutely. And there's, they could sit in contracts law and civil procedure law classes and study the cases of the past all day. But then, that couple hours they get to spend with you, they get to hear what's really going on. What's it like? What's the day-to-day life of a lawyer like? And that is worth its weight in gold. So, I didn't realize that, Evan. Can I call you professor from now on?
Of course.
All right.
Mr. Schein's got a nice ring to it.
The professor says that black letter law is overrated.
Overrated.
Moving on to the couple of fun items here, Evan. Overrated or underrated? Underrated. Farmers markets. farmers markets, this is a good season for farmers markets, I guess. The vegetables are fresh, and who knows what else you can find at these bazaars, these bizarre bazaars. Your thoughts, overrated, underrated farmers markets?
Underrated.
Underrated.
Absolutely
Wow.
underrated. Look, I challenge you. I challenge you, Dave, to tell me a better way to spend a Saturday or Sunday morning than walking through your local farmer's market on a crisp fall day with a pumpkin spice latte, supporting local
Oh, you got it.
businesses. It's great. It is a great way to spend an hour, 2 hours, in the morning on the weekends. I love it.
I'm going to have to reach out to Starbucks to see if we can get some kind of partnership deal here, because we're doing, the pumpkin spice just keeps coming up. I agree with you. Fresh vegetables.
What am I paying you for?
All right, I'm on it. And farmers markets are
Underrated.
Finally, this is a big one. It is we're not quite halfway through the NFL season, but everyone is engrossed in their fantasy leagues. Fantasy sports leagues, Evan. Overrated or underrated?
Underrated. Look, fantasy sports leagues, they bring people together. You don't have to know anymore about sports, about football. They bring neighbors together, friends together, college friends, coworkers. There's a fantasy football league, fantasy league for anyone and everyone. And you don't have to win the league to have a great time. You can finish at last place, and it's an absolute blast. The energy, the competition, the trash talking. What's better than fantasy football? It makes the workday better. It makes friendships better. It brings people and groups together, and sports as a whole binds us, right? It binds us in many ways, and fantasy is an extension of that, right? Fantasy sports leagues are an extension of that and a branch of that, and it gives us something to root for, gives us something to be part of, gives us something to stay connected to people. It's underrated.
Underrated, yeah.
Underrated.
Do you have a favorite fantasy sports name, a team name that you've used in the past or are currently using?
Yeah. So one of my team names, and I'm, by the way, in first place in one league, is
Nice.
Olivia's College Fund.
That's good. You can't
Olivia's
go wrong.
College Fund. Yeah.
You can't. I usually do some kind of play on my beloved New England Patriots in honor of former Patriot gunner Mosi Tatupu. My team one year was the Tatupu Platters. Another year, the name of my team was Dude Looks Like Tom Brady. And this year we have a rookie kicker.
Dave, whoever doubts your creativity, I mean.
This year we have a rookie kicker named Andy Borregales, and so my team is called the Aurora Borregales. Maybe not my best, but very
not
well.
my favorite, but you know what? It's once you start strong, it's hard to keep.
Are
it
you
up.
navigating the challenges of divorce and feeling overwhelmed? You're not alone, and you don't have to go through it alone. You should get in touch with Rhonda Nordyke, financial divorce advocate, where it's all about you. Rhonda helps women transform what can feel like the most difficult time into a journey of empowerment. As a certified financial analyst, Rhonda is committed to guiding women to make confident financial decisions, negotiate effectively, and be positioned to leave a legacy well beyond the divorce process. She has not only helped over 1,000 women that trusted her, but also helped move $25 million into the hands of women that otherwise would have been left on the table. She'll even help you find the right attorney, support you in managing conflict productively, and give you the tools to advocate for yourself. Connect with her today at womensfinancialwellnesscenter.com, because your divorce experience should lead to a stronger, happier you.
Have you ever had a baking oops turn into something delicious? Well, that's exactly what happened with Muffin Crumbles, the dessert that's part muffin, part magic, and all mouth-watering fun. The amazing bakers at Muffin Crumbles take perfectly crumbled muffins, yes, crumbled on purpose, add fluffy homemade whipped cream, and top it all off with delicious extras. It's like a dessert party in a box. And the best part, no rules. Just pure dessert freedom. Spoon it, fork it, or mix it all up. You do you. Perfect for treating yourself, gifting a friend, or just making snack time way more fun. So grab your spork and order your Muffin Crumbles kit now at muffincrumbles.com. That's muffincrumbles.com. Overrated.com, because sometimes the best things come from happy accidents.
The featured guest on this week's episode of the Schein On Podcast is Dr. Tracey Dalgleish, author of the newly released book, You, Your Husband, and His Mother. Dr. Tracey is a clinical psychologist and relationship expert helping individuals and couples. She hosts the incredibly popular podcast, Dear Dr. Tracey. She's also the author of the popular book, I Didn't Sign Up for This. Dr. Tracey, welcome to the podcast.
Evan, thank you for having me here. I'm so excited for our conversation today.
And we're excited to have you. And I have to ask you, you have a brand new book out, which is an absolute must read. And for you, it's the second book in just a couple of years.
Yes.
Now, every book has a really good story behind it. So let me ask you, what inspired you to write your recent book? And when did you realize the dynamic between husband, his wife, mother-in-law was a subject that really needed its own exploration?
Yeah, absolutely. My new book titled You, Your Husband, and His Mother is all about that triangle dynamic. And this really started in the hours with clients and how many couples would come to my therapy room with one of these top areas of conflict, which is around navigating in-laws. And the most common challenge, now here's the piece. Many people will say, well, what about her mother? Yes, absolutely. That can present as a conflict. But when we look at research and also who was in my therapy room, the most likely challenge was between the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law. And really what this book is about, Evan, is we're not looking at estrangement. We're not looking at cutting family off, because so many people come into my therapy room saying, we want to feel good in our marriage. And then how do we do this with extended family? So the book is really about enabling couples to have these skills and tools in their own hands so that they too can build this healthy marriage and feel like that united front to then deal with extended family. And this book really came out of no resource being written in this specific dynamic. We have books about boundaries. We have books about not having drama with family members. There's no book specifically for daughters-in-law.
And I have to tell you, when I read it and I read the title, I was drawn in. I absolutely loved it. And as a divorce attorney, I see people all the time in my office. And believe it or not, and look, it sort of fits your research. So many people talk about the relationship and the issues between themselves and their in-laws and pre-kids, post-kids, and navigating things. And it really is such a source of conflict. And to your point, I find people don't really know how to navigate those issues. And then, like anything else, one domino falls, another one falls thereafter. And it just becomes something that, if not dealt with early on, it doesn't get better.
I said in the book, I recently recorded the audiobook as well. So all of the script is familiar to me, but I said in the book that it can often feel like death by 1,000 paper cuts. Here's what tends to happen. The couple shows up and she's telling me that something happens. Or actually, I'll give it as a live experience. Something difficult happens with mom, extended family member. Wife goes to husband. Hey, that didn't feel good when your mom put me down. Or that didn't feel good when your mom just showed up at our door asking to see baby. I'm just hours home from the hospital and she's at the door. And then husband says, oh, come on, it's just mom. She means well. Or he'll say, that's just my mom. Just, let it go. It's not a big deal. Or even, you're being too sensitive. This is not a big deal. And so then what happens between the couple is there's this dismissing, denying, and minimizing of a really painful experience because couples don't have the skills and tools to get on the same page. And then the complexity of this, Evan, is that you're layering in these legacy patterns between mom and her son. And many men come into my therapy room often around after having a child. They've navigated the engagement. They got through the wedding. Maybe there was a little bit of conflict, but then boundaries really start to be expressed when the first baby joins the family. And of course, because everybody has expectations around what this time is going to look like.
Be careful, Dr. Tracy. In full disclosure, my mother-in-law is a fan of the podcast, so I need to be careful what I say. But even thinking about my relationship with her and how that has changed, and we have a good relationship. But in full disclosure, look, that relationship is different at different points in my life. Pre-kids, I have two kids. As certain situations and circumstances change, so I would imagine that you find the relationship evolves and changes over a period of time.
Absolutely. And what worked early on when you started dating your wife would look different than when you got married, right? That I think of this one couple where it was fine for mom to show up at her son's house and deliver lasagna and fill the fridge all the time. And that was just what they did, right? Mom comes over and hey, let's recognize this. I'm also a mom to a son and a daughter. So I know, I'll likely have a daughter-in-law. And I know that I, as a mother, am my son's first form of loving a woman. Of course, right? We don't want to lose that connection. But now then, when son is living with or married to or has a kid, now that lasagna, while it's a well-intentioned gift, here, feed your bellies, the wife might be gluten intolerant or might actually plan to have a big roast sitting in the fridge so she can put in the crock, whatever it is, right? Or maybe he plans to do that. But it's this challenge around how do I then, as someone who loves and cares for my mother, my parent, how do I then set those boundaries? And what I tend to see is that many men avoid and compartmentalize having those hard conversations earlier on, and that not all, but many use distance and space as a way to navigate those hard conversations with mom compared to what women tend to do. We think of the girls, the teenage girls, and it's encouraged that they slam their doors and they yell at their mothers and they say, I hate you. You can't buy me that clothing. Don't show it, right? Like it just happens so much earlier for girls. And so then when we look at women with their own mothers, they're often more familiar and practiced with setting boundaries and limits with mom, their own mother.
Dr. Tracy, for someone who picks up your book, who's going through an incredibly tough moment, give us one or two practical tools or mindset shifts that you offer that can make an immediate difference.
The first one is to shift from you versus me to you and me against the problem. You have chosen your partner. You are in this together. This does not mean that you abandon your family. Let's not go there. We're not abandoning family. We're not saying they're not important. And truthfully, Evan, most women come into my office saying, I want to make this work. I don't want to be estranged. And I also don't want to be treated this way. So it's you and me as the partners against the problem. And the problem is, how do we then get on the same page? How do we then communicate what we want and need so that we all have a good holiday event, so we all feel good? And then the second piece that couples can really take away here is that when we express something that we want and need, it's not about making sure everybody is happy. When you change a system that's already been in motion for years, and what I mean by that is son is always there for the Thanksgiving meal. And now this system is changing. Or son always says yes to mom. Adult son says, yes, mom, I'm coming for Sunday dinner. Now he's married. Now he has two kids. Sundays are a nightmare because they're trying to get the kids to bed early, to get to daycare the next day, all the things, right? So when adult child goes to mom and says, hey, mom, we're not going to come for dinner, be prepared that mom will be upset. And validate that. Give that reassurance. Let your extended family know how important they are, but also know that if they're upset, it doesn't mean that what you're doing is wrong. And if we can transform that, it'll make a complete difference in how you show up with extended family members.
I love that. And Dr. Tracy, let's go from one brilliant book to another brilliant book. You opened up in your earlier book from 2023. I didn't sign up for this. Tell us the scariest personal story that you chose to reveal in that book.
Oh, you're taking me right into the moment when I wrote this chapter and I absolutely hated it. And, for listeners, and I just want people to know this, we often put experts, lawyers, physicians, therapists, we put them on pedestals and we say, oh, she's a couples therapist. She probably never has these struggles. And yet here I was having worked with and researched couples for almost a decade at that point. And I was a new mom, struggling in postpartum, all of the stuff, mental load challenges with my husband, and we were just trying to make it work. And there was this really hard moment where we had to get on the same page around a family event. And I remember, and I wrote this in the book, that I was so exasperated from feeling not understood and seen. And I teach this in my first book. I teach what's the fight really about. It's not about the dishes. It's not about sex, kids, in-laws. Underneath it, it's really about our need to be seen, to feel important to our loved one, to know that we belong and that we matter to them. That's at the core of all of this. And so in that moment, I was really feeling not seen. And I remember getting on my shoes and walking out of the house, because that is, to walk out of an argument and to not say anything, it's just not a good moment in a relationship.
Now, Tracy, you've said, even though I'm a psychologist, you're not immune to struggling yourself. How do you take your personal experiences and how do you incorporate those experiences into the way you practice and approach the advice and your sessions with the clients that you
Mm,
work with?
I love that question. It's so interesting because when we're trained as a psychologist, we are trained to be objective, which is, let me look at the interventions. I'm going to go into all of the tools that I know, and then I'm going to use those interventions with you. And there's something really important about therapy in the last, I'm going to even say 10 years, of how it's changed as a therapist to connection with a client. And I particularly noticed this through the pandemic, through something where we were all experiencing this. But there's something really powerful about knowing that the person you are sitting across from also struggles with hard moments. I think of this one client who really had this wall up with me at the beginning of our work together. And she happened to follow me on Instagram. Of course, my consent form always says to people, I can't ensure your confidentiality on Instagram. I don't encourage people to follow me, that piece, right? So she did happen to follow me, and I did happen to have a weekend where I shared a really hard parenting moment, feeling like I'm failing as a mother, just feeling overwhelmed, dysregulated, not at my best self. She came to session the week after that and she said, I realize you're human too. I realize that you're not perfect. And so she completely just broke the veil of my therapist never struggles, and I could see her as a human. And so oftentimes while I'm working through the interventions with clients around what I'm working with them towards their goals, I'm also seeing the moments of where people know that there's another human sitting in front of them. And we
I,
know
I,
this.
yeah, I love that. I mean, you're talking about
Yeah.
authenticity, which is something that I
Yes.
think as a society, we
Yes.
crave more, we need more, we look to the people, whether it's the type of relationship, the therapist, patient relationship, whether it's people you work
Yeah.
with, whether it's your loved one, significant other partner, you want that authenticity, which I think is becoming such an incredibly important thing in all aspects of life.
Oh, 100%, Evan. You've just nailed exactly what that is. And when we think about what's at the core of our struggles, for many people, it's shame. And we know from the work of Brene Brown, shame keeps us in a dark room and it tells us we're bad, defective, and it's only us. And no one else struggles with this. And so when you can open the curtain to someone and say, oh, you've yelled at your husband before. I get it. I've actually been there. And it's not, there's quite a difference here. We call them disclosures, personal disclosures in therapy. It's not that a client comes in and says, oh gosh, I had such a hard parenting moment this weekend. And I say, oh girl, let me tell you, me too. Like it's not a me too experience. It is an intervention that is timed depending on who the client is. And at that moment, and especially when people feel shame, when you can say, I know that dark hole you've been in, and you're not alone in that dark hole.
You mentioned the word shame, and I see people who I consult with for years, people who stay in marriages, stay in relationships for all sorts of reasons. It could be because they have kids together and the kids are very young and they're concerned about the kids being with the other parent, or there might be an addiction, or there might be a financial reason people stay in marriages and relationships. Have you seen in your practice a shift from the stigma of divorce and the stigma of going through that process to now it's accepted, and how we define a marriage as a society, even if it doesn't, last forever until death do us part, you can still be married 15, 20 years, raise a couple of kids, and define it as a successful marriage, even though it didn't last forever. So are you seeing that shift in your work?
Not so much in my work. No, I think people carry still these deep internalized beliefs around what it means to find a person. I think of many people who come in individually and say, I don't think this relationship is for me. And we've been in this for X number of years, but there's no abuse, there's no alcoholism, there's no substance abuse, gambling, addictions. Why should I be leaving this person? And so there's this narrative, an internalized understanding that once you marry, it's forever. So I do think that we haven't broken through that just yet. And it's difficult because oftentimes then we think, well, what did you see your parents do? And many people will say, I never saw my parents in a loving relationship. I never saw them connect. And they're still together 50 years later.
That's interesting. And you have a fantastic podcast, Dear Dr. Tracy. Out of all the things you do, the podcast, the book, your practice, is there any one particular aspect of it that you love more than the other? Or how do you find time to do all of it?
Mm. I always tell people I can't do this alone. My husband is in the business with me. And so he's behind the scenes, navigating bookkeeping, accounting, doing podcast related type things. He's one of the people sitting with me on the podcast the most. Evan, I still go back to the core of who I am. I will never give up my clinical practice. I love sitting across from someone. I love sitting in a room with a couple who come in not having spoken to each other or understanding each other for 2 days, and then them walking out, seeing each other in a new light and having tools to move forward. So that's just what's at my core. But then when I think of all of the other buckets that I drop into, I love writing. Being able to publish books has been such a gift, and it's such a really cool way to reach more people because I appreciate that not everybody wants to go to therapy or can go to therapy. But then there's this other really cool piece that I love doing, and that's where Greg and I sit on the podcast together. And we don't just talk about, here are 5 ways to not get defensive. We talk about, hey, do you remember that last time you were defensive? Where did we go wrong there? And so, we just show people that we're real, we're human, we get stuck too. We're in the thick of parenting and we get it.
So if your 25-year-old self could listen to Dear Dr. Tracy, is there a particular episode that would hit hardest?
Oh, wow. Oh gosh. You're asking, I know you're well deep into season 5, aren't you? I think I'm in season 6. It's like asking me to go through this whole catalog. There's one episode that I really love doing, and that is around turning disconnection into connection. And that was one that Greg and I really walked through what it means to get stuck in these repetitive cycles. And as a 25-year-old, let's see, I was in my PhD, I was working with emotionally focused couples therapy. I knew all the things, but I think it would be helpful to hear that, hey, guess what? In many years, you're probably going to be stuck a little bit too.
What's one thing you've learned from your clients that you've brought to your own marriage? Because before we talk about your personal experiences and what
Mm.
you bring to your clients, but turn that around.
Oh, goodness. I learn every day from my clients, and it is such a gift to get to walk with people in front of them to see some of their deepest moments. I think the piece that I always come back to is what it means to be vulnerable in front of others. It's just powerful. And Evan, true vulnerability is about not controlling the outcome. It's about going into something not knowing how the other person is going to respond, not knowing necessarily how and what you're going to say, but it's about the end goal of wanting to reach connection. And I think that's a lesson that we can all walk through every day.
Dr. Tracy, I encourage so many of my clients go to couples therapy, right? Divorce, it's the last resort. You need to be 100% confident that once you move forward, right, it's hard to unwind the emotions tied to moving forward with the divorce process. Do you find in your practice that there is generally one person in the couples therapy sessions who isn't as invested as the other person in being there from the beginning? And if so, how do you navigate that from the start?
I think that depends. I see a range of it. There are people who appreciate therapy and come in. Those people tend to be earlier on in their relationship and so not quite as entrenched in those distressing cycles. And then the other one is one partner has been asking and asking for the other person to go. And, it's so interesting, Evan. One of the things I love to say to people is go to couples therapy because it's your chance to tell your story. You get to have a voice here. Tell your side. I want to hear your story. And what often happens, though, is that more resistant person is hearing the other person say, there's something wrong with you and you need to change. You're not doing the work in our marriage. You need to be different. And listen, do you want to show up to any kind of session where you're in the hot seat being told to change? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And I say to people, hey, listen, there's no video camera following you. I don't know what really happened. I'm not going to be the judge of that. But I know here that neither one of you are at fault just for solely who you are, because it takes two people to get stuck in the cycle that you're in. And that cycle doesn't have a beginning or the end. She gets angry and critical, and you say, well, if you just weren't so angry and critical, and she says, or he says, they say, and you get so defensive, which is why I'm so angry and critical. And so we can spend sessions pointing fingers at each other, but we're not going to change anything if you do that. So now let's put that problem in front of you. The cycle is the problem, and we have to help you get out of that first before we can actually start problem solving and meeting each other's needs.
So to that point, is there common advice you give people in the beginning that you find couples resist, yet you know they're going to thank you later?
Connection time. People really struggle with getting intentional with connection time. And that is even if you haven't resolved the big stuff yet, we're going to get to that in therapy. Thinking of the book, if you're still haven't set boundaries with your mother-in-law and you're struggling with that, here's the thing. The piece you can control is spending time together. And we know that for couples, when they have experiences, that's a feel good chemical in your body. That releases oxytocin if you're hugging for 30 seconds. That releases serotonin if you go to the music concert together. Those experiences are bonding and are important for you. So go and do those things. Find a way to date each other again. Doesn't solve all the problems, but we have to start there. And then the other thing that couples always resist me on, Evan, is can you have a weekly check-in? 20 minutes every Sunday. Talk about what are you grateful for about this relationship? When was a moment this week where you felt connected? And if you're ready for it, asking each other, was there a stressful time this week that I wasn't there for you? And then what can we do moving forward? That check-in and listening to each other. You can't go into that meeting with defenses up and getting angry and critical, but listen to each other. And when you do that, then again, you're slowly tethering together what it means to be side by side in life.
Dr. Tracy, I see people at all stages, people who are separating, people who have young kids, people who, irrespective of the fact that they might have not made it as partners or spouses, they're going to have to co-parent going forward because they have young kids together. How do you help people find that common ground when there has either been divorce, betrayal, an affair, and find a way to still work together cooperatively going forward when there has been that total breakdown in trust?
And this comes back to the cycle. I see so many people trying to co-parent and still getting stuck in their negative cycle. And I say to people, you did that while you were married. We don't want to keep continuing doing that. So in order to do that, you need to remove the attacking of each other, the feelings you have about the other person, remove your ego. And now the focus is on the kids. Communication has to be clear. Your actions have to be consistent. You have to take accountability that if you said you were going to send the sneakers and transition of clothes back with the kids, if you didn't do that, don't do the whole defensive spiral that you did in your marriage. You're tired of that. You're leaving that. So leave that behind and say, hey, you know what? I made that mistake. I will set a reminder in my phone for next time so that that doesn't happen again. And that completely removes anything about the self and keeps the focus on the kids. That's the goal. Because why would you want to keep doing that same cycle over and over again?
Dr. Tracey, before we turn it over to producer Dave for a fun segment we do on the podcast called They Said It, I want to bring it back to your new book. Again, it's an absolute must read. You, your husband, and his mother. What's it been like for you getting all the feedback and hearing from so many people who have said, thank you. Thank you for writing about a topic that has caused conflict, caused issues, caused problems, and we did not know how to navigate those things. It has to be, I would imagine, so incredibly rewarding for you.
Yeah, I go into the word meaningful. It's just so meaningful. And the work that the value I've always tapped into in the work I do, Evan, is around being able to reach more people and to help people feel seen and understood. And there are people who walk around and say, oh, yes, I have a good relationship with my mother-in-law. But then when stories start to come out, they say, oh, yeah, I remember that time that, and then the experiences come out. And someone will then say, I thought it was just me. I didn't know other people struggled with this. And just to know that, you know, and we didn't touch on this, Evan, I talk more about it in the book, but it's this sense of daughters-in-law, women, wives today, we know different. We parent differently. We divide the mental load differently. We are showing up at work differently. And so, of course, then things are changing in families. And people are saying to me, thank you for these tools. Like, this is just what we've been looking for. Finally, I feel seen. And finally, then my husband can be on the same page with me. And that's meaningful. So thank you. I'm just so grateful to get to talk about it.
It's such a credit to you and obviously your work and your book and everything that you do and your Instagram and just, you know, talking about the issues that people don't talk about, right? Because so many people are going through exactly what your book dives into. So it's a credit to you for figuring that out and writing such an absolutely fantastic book. Producer Dave, come on, let's talk about Dr. Tracey's book and let's get into the fun segment on the podcast.
Let's do it. It is time for They Said It. So here we go.
They said it.
They said it.
They said it.
Yes, They Said It is the portion of the program where I produce famous quotes from famous people, some people who, quite frankly, I had to look up because I didn't know who they were. But the quotes are great. Let's go to the first one here. It comes from author and professor Brene Brown. And Brene had the following to say: vulnerability is the birthplace of innovation, creativity, and change. Now, judging by the conversation you just had with Evan, Dr. Tracey, I have a feeling that I know what you're going to say about this, or roughly. But tell us, how does that quote strike you from Brene Brown?
Oh, yeah. When we can just sink into our own truth and have trust in ourselves, I mean, it's exactly what's needed to be able to create, to develop, to be with others. And that's really what this is about. So this quote's just one of my favorite.
Very good. That's correct, by the way. Yeah, we're going to give you a point for that. No.
I get points. I love
Yes.
this reward system.
Yes. Why not? The next quote comes to us from author and motivational speaker Leo Buscaglia. And Leo had the following to say: a loving relationship is one in which the loved one is free to be himself, to laugh with me, but never at me, to cry with me, but never because of me. Your thoughts on that one, Dr. Tracey?
I have a yes and. There's a yes
good.
and in here, that yes to laugh with me but never at me. And then the other one is to cry with me but never because of me. Here's what I want people to know. And I think we miss this in relationships. The moment your partner means something to you is the moment they have the power to hurt you. It's not if your lover is going to hurt you, it's when. Because it could be a moment of stress where they didn't see you. They could be getting home late with something. We don't know what it is. But romantic relationships are not about never causing hurt. It's about repairing and deepening connection after those moments of hurt happen. I'm not saying it's okay to hurt people, but that's inevitable.
Well, you're right. And this is one of these quotes that kind of describes an idyllic relationship, a perfect relationship, maybe.
Yeah.
And you're right. I mean, you're absolutely going to cry because of something happened with your partner at some point, probably because you care. And so, when they either let you down or do something that upsets you, it's going to happen. So, and when it happens, call Dr. Tracey. I mean, that's how you do it. All right. Our final quote for They Said It comes to us from author and founder of Parenting Magazine, Peggy O'Mara, who had the following to say: "The way we talk to our children becomes their inner voice." So,
heads on, yes, 100%, absolutely. Okay. Oh my goodness, yes, and we know that, right? When I sit with adults and I ask them, "Where does this come from?" I think of one client actually who said, "Well, my parents never told me to be perfect." Well, okay, so let's dig a little bit deeper. Let's look around. What was it like growing up? But then she found that her parents were always these high achieving, perfectionist performers, that even then became her inner voice. So what we experience growing up, the things that are said to us, how we experience the world, absolutely becomes part of our internal dialogue.
Do a lot of parents make the mistake of saying, "Do as I say, not as I do"?
I think that's changing. Mm-hmm. That one is changing today, but I know we probably grew up with that one.
It just seems like there's a lot of wisdom in the quote. I mean, it's pretty simple, but I have two kids, and there's always that moment where they say something, and maybe they're making a bad joke, or heaven forbid, like swearing in public or something. And it's like, oh, that came from me. That was directly from me, So they're listening all the time, those little guys.
We tell our kids, hey, you can swear at home. If you're really upset about it, go ahead. But we want to be considerate of other people, and that doesn't work for everybody in public and in their world. So let's make sure of that. I also remind parents to look underneath, because sometimes, I think of 7 was a big age with my kids. 7 for many people is when there's this increased anger that shows up. And it's kind of this overnight sensation of like, where did my little baby go? And now you're angry, slamming doors. And I remember the first time one of them said, "I hate you." Now, I've never said that to him or her, to them, either of them. I've never said that. But those words are just so real because it's communicating a feeling. So what's underneath the behavior or the words? And often that's, "I'm so angry right now." And they don't know how to say it yet.
That's right. Hopefully they don't drop an F-bomb at Passover dinner like my son did one year. We came back from it. Don't worry. We recovered from it.
Of course.
Well, you did very well in They Said It, Dr. Tracey. You get major points for all of your responses and an extra point for correctly using the improv comedy device of yes and, which is very important in podcasting, in life, and in improv comedy.
I love that. All right. I perfected it then. I reached my goal.
Absolutely. Back to you, Evan, to wrap things up.
That was awesome. And Dr. Tracey, this was brilliant. Absolutely tremendous stuff. Pure gold. Congratulations on your new book, You, Your Husband, and His Mother. Tell everybody where they can pick up a copy of the book, where they could learn everything that you have going on, and get in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. Grab the book. It's available anywhere where it's sold. It's available on all formats. Go to that independent bookstore and support the independent bookstores. And then if you're looking for more, head over to my website, drtracyd.com. The book links are also there. But my favorite thing, Evan, is when people come into my social media. So come over on Instagram, send me a DM, let me know what you needed to hear today, and say hello.
And you have such a fantastic Instagram profile, always giving out some great nuggets and words of wisdom. So everybody head over there and check that out. And Dr. Tracey, it was a pleasure.
Thanks, Evan.
Episode 93 of the Schein On Podcast. This was tremendous. Dr. Tracey was great. Her book, it's an absolute must read. Listeners can get this podcast and all episodes of the Schein On Podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. Producer Dave, the magician behind the scenes, making it happen episode after episode. And to all the listeners of the podcast who continue reaching out and sending in their comments to the Schein On Podcast inbox, thank you for listening as always. I'm Evan Schein, and I'll talk to you again real soon.